Yeah, so I love candy cane. Of course, when you're Christmas Eve, baby, you have to like candy. So,
Good evening, everybody. We'll go ahead and start the work session.
William and Brandon, you two.
It is. I think.
All right, so hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hello. Hear me okay?
Yes.
My name is William Patterson. I'm the program manager for adult education. Brian, you guys are probably more familiar with me. Thank you guys for letting me come here tonight, kind of fill you in on what we do and kind of direction where we're going.
Thanks for being here.
You got a keyboard and a mouse.
Okay. So some of the services that we offer, we have HSC, which was used to be called the GED. We have classes and testing for that. We have ELL classes, so teaching English to adults. We have career-oriented classes, which include welding, CNC, and phlebotomy, and certification classes that are partnered with that. We have partnerships with local businesses to provide relevant training. So whatever training they might need, if it's ELL services and with their employees, or if it's specific to the businesses that they have. And then we have career and life services. So we have a career coach that helps connect people. If they have jobs, if they have different obstacles, anything that they might face, we try to help them overcome those. So who we serve, so this is, I pulled these numbers about 2 weeks ago. We have approximately 30 HSE students, so these are students that come in for classes. There's roughly 9 in the morning and roughly 21 at night. For the ELL students, we have approximately 170. We have 40 in the morning and about 130 at night. So career students, welding, phlebotomy, this is a growing field as well. We have approximately 70 students who are enrolled. And HSE testing, this varies. Our testing center, the states had some different changes with their vendor through this year, but approximately 200 adults go through that each year to take their tests. Program growth, we have approximately 340 students on a waiting list for ELL services. Most of these are parents of students in the community. That list has gone down over the last couple of weeks as we've worked to get more and more students in classes. Current students requesting career services. So a lot of students that come in, especially our immigrant populations, they need different help with resumes, computer training, typing, a lot of basic skills classes, and smaller, more basic career services. We also have multiple business partners that are requesting more career training. So they want to come in and do CNC training with us. They want to do welding with us. So our state guidance, we have one of the largest ELL programs in the state, and it's continuing to grow. Our HSE classes are dwindling. Our attendance at night has been pretty poor due to different life circumstances, schedules, different things like that. And so we're looking to adjust our programming to meet the students' needs. One of the other focuses that we have from the state is what we call IETs. This is kind of like a class within a class. So we're looking to bring all of these students more grouped together so that we can pull individually from the classrooms to address individual needs. So we have 10 classrooms of students together. There might be 2 in this classroom, 1 in this classroom that needs specific services so that we can build a class within those. Programming changes, moving ELL from Pure Moran over to the freshman division. So right now, we currently have some confusion between different buildings. If students come to Elkhart Central or freshman division to enroll, then they go to class at Pure Moran, they come back to do HSE testing or something over at Central. Moving us all together would help just reduce a lot of that different confusion. Having all of our programs within one building, we should be able to build stronger IET classes and help address needs. We're also looking at increasing our teaching staff to help accommodate our wait list. So we're looking to add on to our ELL team. Our current HSE students, I met with all of these students as well. we're looking to have them join a hybrid class or a virtual class. So a lot of them have different barriers. They work full time, they get technology, they just don't show up very often. So offering them a 2-day in-person or online, giving them some different options to be able to work on their HSC material. I believe more, if we keep them better engaged, we can help grow that by offering some flexibility with services. We can also get them into more of the IET courses and the certifications. I believe that's my last slide. There should be a handout of some sheets here that I can explain as well. This long one here is kind of a breakdown of what we do with some different terms. I took this kind of directly from the state. What a WEI is, that's where you work directly with a partner, but they have some kind of a buy-in there. So either they're paying their students to participate in the class, or they cover class costs. And then integrated education and technology, kind of the definition of what that is and how that's structured. And then just also some additional terms down there. Some different guidance that I have from the state. There was I'm not sure what your guys' order is in, but their focus is on enrollment for the state. So we have a large waiting list of students that are waiting to get in. And we're one of the largest providers for ELL services, so that's where the state wants us to go. The second one that says Indiana Adult Education, where it's got state goals and priorities. If you look on the side there, it's got limited English proficiency percentage of households, and Elkhart is the number 2 highest in the state for limited English in the household, households in the state. And just the last one was we're a top performer for offering medical interpretation, bilingual medical interpretation students. So these are individuals who speak English and Spanish, and then they also go on to do medical interpreting for hospitals and various partners. So we were pretty strong with that and led the state as far as offering bilingual services.
Now, Will, when we met a month or so ago, you talked about an accelerated program where they can test out and then focus on their needs. How is that coming along?
So what you're talking about, the HSC boot camp, that's kind of a work in progress until after I believe we got everything moved over. But essentially, if you have students who have skills and they might have English down and science, but they're struggling really in math. So you have a boot camp where they might come in for 3 days and you really hammer those math skills and you help them to pass the test. So instead of going through a full class that might take a year, you can accelerate that, get that together, give them what they need.
The ELL is our largest growth and the fastest growth, and we've got the wait list. And the HSE is dwindling in numbers, and so obviously we've got staff for both programs. By combining them, that makes sense to me. And when we did talk about a month ago, it was a little confusing in the beginning to say, we have some here for ELL, some for HSE. How do if you commingle them into a class, have a hybrid class, how would that work? I think you explained it that there are certain levels under the ELL that, once those students get to a certain level, the curriculum kind of mirrors an HSE program. So it would seem to make a lot of sense that you could do that.
Yep. So basically we have 6 levels, and 1 through 5 is a focus just on the language. And probably once you start getting 5 until 6, it means you're English proficient. So you can speak the language, you can understand it, comprehend it, and then your goal from there is to move to your transition class. And so you're working on your HSE skills within that group. Did that answer your question?
It does, yep.
So how long have you guys been at the freshman division? Was it starting this year?
It was the beginning of last academic year they moved into that space.
Okay.
They were still stretched. Most of the programming was happening at Pierre Moran. Very little, mostly just during the day at the freshman division. And then that's when this conversation started during this first semester and looking at the resources that are available. As everybody up here knows and everybody that's sitting up there, it's hard to find folks.
Sure.
Especially for teachers. And so when we're struggling to fill staffing, and we have classrooms where folks aren't showing up, and we're dedicating 4 employees to HSE classes during the evening where we maybe have 4 to 5 students showing up, we need to evaluate how we can better utilize those staff. And I think that that's where the diverse menu of options for HSE students, whether it's a hybrid model, if they're available during the day, if it's the boot camp, or if it's folding them in with those level 6 ELL students, it makes a lot more sense. You're still able to serve the population, but you're also utilizing your staff to ensure that we serve more people.
So did I hear correctly when I heard you say that our Spanish speaking,
Not just Spanish.
I'm sorry,
So it's broad.
right, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be too focused, but we are number 1 in having that language barrier in the home? Or
Number
what did I
2, as far as, limited English proficiency, so that's not their native language.
Concentration per capita.
Yeah,
per
percentage.
capita?
It's a
Okay, got it,
percentage.
all right. So I was like, oh, that, and I always get into the curious thing. Wonder why that is. Why is it here, so.
Spanish still is our main non-English spoken language, but it's also followed up by, we have a large group of people that came from Haiti, so French,
Yes.
Ukrainian and Russian,
Mhm.
are also out there, and it's probably about a third of just Spanish speaking.
Okay.
Currently, right now, we serve about 1/3 of that population.
Okay. Thank you.
What kind of numbers are you seeing that are French speaking and Ukrainian, Russian, whatever?
It kind of depends, because our program kind of, I hate to say it, it puts people together from all the same categories. So if you're from Ukraine but you speak Russian, they kind of base it by the language. It doesn't necessarily tail it through, but I would say that it's smaller than what the French Haitian students are. Maybe 20, just around between day and night, maybe 30. But I could be wrong on that.
I love the diversity. I really do. I think it's great for our school.
We had a cultural day where they could express where they came from, their languages and those different kind of things. We have large populations. What you think of English look like just Spanish, but we have people that come from India that speak different dialects. We had some Ukrainian students that we couldn't even translate for because they were so far disconnected from the rest of Ukraine. Our other students who were from Ukraine and Russia couldn't even help us translate. So we really had to work with them to help figure out what their dialect was and what they were speaking. So it was a very diverse group of
Yeah. Yeah.
So do these classes meet every night? Is that, and then, so how long, what is the standard time of somebody's in the program?
That's a really good question. So it really depends on where you're at. So if you start off and you don't know any language, you got to work from level 1, which is your beginning, all the way through level 5. You kind of get it split off because if somebody's level 1, they're really motivated, then they can jump to level 2 because they got that in there. So it really depends. And language is a harder, it's much harder to gauge who's going to do what, just because it's motivation and it's also ability. So it could be 6 months before you move up a level or 2. It could be a year. So it just really depends, and practice is a big part of that too. So if you're in an environment where I'm Spanish only speaking and I speak Spanish during the day and my only influx of English is at night, where it's the opposite with some other people. If I'm Spanish speaking only and I have English during the day, I'm going to grow much quicker too, just that practice.
Do you have any data that shows like what the average time is for how people progress?
I could probably pull that and put that together, but I don't have that on me.
How many teachers do you think you need? Will you need, if you've got 340 on the waiting list, what is your realistic expectation?
Realistically, I like to add 3 or 4 more teachers.
Okay.
I like our level 1s tend to be our highest classes that that have the highest number in the classes, and then they split off and go farther. What I need is more level 1 teachers to help build those up, so it kind of levels off the classes going on.
And are these certified teachers?
So did you already ask this, Ann, on data on retention after they do level 1? Is there like, after they've taken level 1, how many students go on after that? Because it seems like your bulk is there and then it kind of goes like that maybe?
I think it kind of levels off when they get between 3 and 5. If they think they know enough to progress and be fine, then you have a lot more drop off. But also with your level 1, I can tell you that we're going to have 25 come in tonight, sign up for the class, go through the orientation with them, and you'll have some drop off then too from a different variety of factors. So job changes, different stuff like that. And that's kind of, we're doing a hybrid with some of that too. So if somebody is going to be gone for a while, they can still stay connected with the teacher. Or if one gal had a baby, so she's going to be gone for a while, so we can still connect with her too. And
Nice.
keep them in the classroom.
Nice. Sounds like you're working hard at it.
Does it follow the school year calendar? Like, there are these classes that meet like all year, so you might have a summer group that start.
So
I guess it's like a rolling type.
yep, generally we follow Elkhart's calendar for breaks off time, those kind of things. Our program actually runs from June 30th until July 1st. In the summertime, when more students are off, we have a lot less attendance because they're home with their kids during the summer as well. We ran through June 30th last year, and our attendance was a fifth of what probably sixth of what it actually normally is, just because of that, with it being summer.
Any other challenges that you can name other than staffing at this point?
Well, I think it's always a different challenge when you have a new language, when you haven't seen, so that's kind of always a challenge coming in, but we've been pretty adaptable with that, figuring out how to do that, translation kits to figure that out. I think probably one of the challenges that comes in if you have a smaller group of students that come from a different country and they're all in together, it's building that community, and if they don't speak the language, it's hard to build that community.
Sure.
So that's definitely a challenge when you have a couple people from one spot, a couple from the other, when they can't build that. Once you build that community though, then it's a great experience.
What do you think is your greatest strength in your program?
My teachers for sure. The ELL teachers especially, because we can have an influx of people that we don't know what levels they are, we don't know where they're going to fit, and they will work to help them fit in.
Nice.
And they do not want to say no to more people. So.
Love that.
Is there any more questions or discussion? Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you for the update.
More than willing to come visit anytime or see what you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Brandon, before you leave, how did that happen to you?
Finish your presentation.
So what you said?
Yes, what is that? It's 20-some student roughly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're going
yeah.
in front of it or is that?
What's that? No, that was it. So I was down there Wednesday and took hot rodders,
Yeah.
what she's talking about. So Wednesday, Thursday, they ran 4 qualifying runs. So basically you have this group that goes to a regional qualifier in Las Vegas and the top 5 from there. And then you have a group that goes to Indianapolis, and I think it's 14 teams, and the top 5 from there. And then on Friday and Saturday, whoever gets in the top 5 in Indiana and the top 5 from Las Vegas then go. And it was rough to start. Kids were very young, had not experienced it before. The first run was probably the worst run I've ever seen Elkhart make. And so I watched them run, both of them Wednesday, both of them Thursday. And when I left Thursday, I did not expect them to advance to the finals. They did get better each and every time. You could see the confidence in the kids, the teamwork. But the thing I think I'm most proud of is just the way they carried themselves. We had so many people come up to talk to just about how the students carried themselves, how they interacted. So they squeezed in as the number 5 from Indiana to qualify for finals, but it just kept getting better. Friday for their 2 runs and then Saturday. And so finishing fourth was quite the accomplishment.
Awesome, that's awesome.
Thank you for asking.
And they got how much in scholarships?
20,000+, I don't know the exact dollar amount per student.
Per student.
And that's to specific schools, right?
What's that?
To specific schools, yeah, yeah. So like AJ Brunson, where he is, does that money carry over for that?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Awesome.
Did they also get tools?
No, for this one, it's just dollars. So we have other competitions where they can compete for dollars and tools.
Okay.
That's our skills assessment.
Wow, good deal.
Since we have a little time in the work session, we can go ahead like we did last time and use a little bit of time for the instructional report in order to keep the board meeting itself shorter. So in front of you, behind your agenda is a packet of things for the instructional report. I'm going to save the GPS dashboard for during the board meeting itself so that that's part of the formal board meeting. But I can talk a little bit about the checklist data from NWEA. So if you'll remember, we give a assessment at the beginning of the year, the BOY checklist data on letter recognition for kindergartners. And so this is that data. And back at the beginning of the year, we shared with you this information where by school, the number of kindergartners, and then again, the color coding is that we have students who identify fewer than 40% of their letters, 40 to 80% of their letters, and more than 80% of their letters. So that's how we get the low, medium, and high. And so back at the beginning of the year, we had 35% of our students who were in that high category. And now here, we're doing this middle of the year. So this is our assessment is in the middle of the year. We now have 73% of our students who can identify more than 80% of their letters. And you see that for several of our buildings, we're up into the 80% of students that can do that. And as of right now, and in that data set, Eastwood at 93% of their students are in the high category. And they have no students in the low category in being able to identify their letters. Across the district in our kindergartners, we have 70 kindergartners across the district who are still identifying fewer than 40% of their letters, upper or lower case. So what you've seen here is almost a 38% increase in the high category, decreases in the other two corresponding to that. So what we hope to see is by the time we get to the end of the year that we are up over 90% and much better on that. But this is what's happening in terms of that letter recognition.
Is this on track to where you were perceiving it to
I'll
be?
talk about that in a second when we get to the dashboard.
Okay.
If you'll hold on.
Yep.
So then our second set of data is our phoneme identification. So this is letter sounds. And what we have here is a similar setup. So here, when we looked at the beginning of the year, we had only 9% of our students who were able to identify 80% or more of the sounds in that checklist. And we had quite a few, over half our students who were in the low category and about a little over a third in that medium category. As we now look at this point in the year, we've had a 12% growth that gets us to about 21.5% of our students in the high, 40% in low, and 37% in the medium. And across here, you see that some of our schools, particularly Riverview, Oslo, and up here at Cleveland and Eastwood again, are some of our higher percentages. And one of the trends that we're seeing that we want to now talk with Eastwood about is they're kind of the highest school in letter identification. They're the highest school here in terms of sound identification. What are they doing and what's happening there and those kind of things so that we can see that in addition to conversations with some of the other districts that are, or the other schools that are doing that well as well. And then the third piece of data is the two data sets that we get from second grade. So in second grade, what we see here is that we look at syllable types. So this is short words and the sounds that they make, and then our consonant blends and our digraphs, so how letter sounds come together. So at the beginning of the year, we had 43% of our students in the reading syllables types that were in the high category, 42 in the medium, and about 14% in the low. And when we come down here and look at where we are now, we're down to about 11% in the low, a little over a third in the medium category, and approaching 52% in that high category. So that's an 8% increase district-wide as we did that. And again, as you go down through here and you look at the buildings that are in those high 50s and 60%, and Riverview with 77% of their students in that high category. Then as we go to the consonant blends and digraphs, so again, the sound combinations. So this was our data from the beginning of the year, basically a third and a third and a third across the second grade. And then when we come down here and look at where we are now, we are reducing that by about 10% and increasing that by about 10%. And so our medium, some of our lows moved up to mediums and mediums up to highs. And we've seen an 11% increase on the ability of students to identify those. And again, you see in here some of those up 50% and higher. And again, Riverview second grade doing very strongly in this category. So some of those techniques and what's happening, student makeup, those kind of questions will be things that we'll be exploring to see what's happening there.
Steve, do you think Riverview's 70% here is because of the strong foundation laid 2 years ago in their kindergarten?
Can be. You also want to come up and look, and like they're at 58% to start the year. So, I mean, they're already starting at a high point as well.
Well, and that's what I mean, because of
So the
the,
question is that a sequential thing, and what's happening around the work with the essential standards? Is that just student makeup in general? Those are the questions that we're looking at. So that's part of the reason the work that we're doing on the e-learning days is so important, is because then when we bring all of those teachers together from that entire grade level, from all of those buildings, then there can be conversation about what does this standard mean? What does it mean to teach this? What does it look like to be proficient at this standard? So we're all getting to that level of where that's the common expectation and the ability to teach to get there. So to get back to your question, Anne, as we go to our dashboard that we have put together, and this is all within our goal 3 area. Make this a little bit bigger. So at the beginning of the year, these were our data points from last year. So at the beginning of the year last year, we were at 83.65, 14.65, 51.07, and 40.79. And you will recall that we did that actually later in the semester than we did at the true beginning.
Right.
So when you compare that to our true beginning of the year data within the first few weeks of school, you'll see that that's higher.
Right.
So really what we were curious about was how does this compare maybe more to middle of the year, because we did this a little closer to middle of the year data last year. So what we're seeing is that with our kindergartners, they are a little bit behind where the kindergartners last year were at that beginning of the year, middle of the year point. When you look at our first grade, we're about 7 percentage points higher at our middle of the year this year compared to roughly that middle of the year last year, when it was really the beginning of the year. We're on par with this first data set here, and we're a couple points higher here. So what we're seeing is that just generally in terms of this, there's work that needs to be done to kind of get our kindergartners this year to where those kindergartners were last year. But again, we'll look overall what that is. But our percentage of growth, I mean, again, to get the students from there to there, 38% growth in that. And then overall, when we take the average of these 4, we're at 17.3% growth across those 4 categories so far this year as we're looking at middle of the year. So our goal would and hope is that we're looking at our end of our year here, we're still seeing similar percentage rates of growth, and we can land at perhaps a point that's even twice as high as this by the time we get there, especially with what can be happening at those levels of first grade. So that is the summary of that NWEA checklist data. And again, when we do that end of the year data, then we can have that for you and present that at the end of that. For a couple of the buildings that we know really utilize these checklists and go within the NWEA system and do what's called progress monitoring. So they're formatively going back and visiting those checklists and giving them to students every few weeks to kind of see where they are. In a couple of instances, we wanted to just kind of discover a little bit more how those buildings are using those and how they're doing that. Because in a couple of instances, we know that those are some buildings that are seeing some of the higher results. So we want to see how that's informing their instruction and what they're doing back and forth with that. Any questions I can answer on that? We do have a little bit more time. I don't know if you want to go ahead and do the curriculum instruction. So the other piece that we wanted to share with you was the work of the e-learning day. And so elementary and secondary, just a review of the work that happened. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Good evening. Okay, so I'm going to share a little bit about some of the work that we did on the December 8th Learning Day that actually aligns with exactly the things that Steve talked to you about here. So on this day, we reviewed, first of all, kind of what we had accomplished so far with ELA. So last spring, one of our main goals is to identify what our essential standards were at each grade level for ELA. So last spring, during a district e-learning day, we got all of our grade level team teachers together. So all third grade teachers across the district, all first grade, and they sat down and looked at the standards based on what the current maps for the state assessments say, based on what was being taught at grade levels above and below them, and identified what those essential standards were. Then after that, between the spring and then this e-learning day, buildings went back and did some unwrapping of those standards. And basically what that meant is they took the standard and broke it down and said, okay, if we're going to teach main idea, that's the standard, what are the learning targets we need to break that down into to make sure that we're getting kids to master that? So for example, main idea, one of the first things you need to be able to do to teach kids main idea is first they have to be able to identify key details in a story. So that's the first target. We're going to identify the key details in a story. Can a kid recall those details? So that would be the first target. And the second target, can we teach them to understand using those details how to identify the main idea? Then can they recall that on their own? So basically taking each of those standards and breaking it down into chunks to say, okay, how are we going to break this down to teach it to kids so we know that we'll teach this piece of it, and then we'll do some formative assessment to see and make sure that they got it, to check for understanding before we move on to the next chunk. And then if a kid didn't get it, let's give them some intervention right then and there so they'll be ready to move on to the next piece. So that's what unwrapping the standard basically meant. So they did that, and then what they did with the essential standards is then they kind of put those on maps in their building to say, okay, if these are our essential standards, how are we going to kind of plan that out over the year of how we're going to teach these pieces in chunks? Because most standards, you don't just teach in like a week. Like you don't teach main idea all in 1 week. You take those chunks and you break it out and you make the text harder and you make the passages longer and you increase the rigor of that. So that's what buildings did leading up to this e-learning day. So then on our December 8th e-learning day, when they all came together, we really spent the day talking about the understanding of what that standard meant so that everybody is kind of on the same page. So when you're learning about main idea at Pinewood, it's the same learning you're getting about main idea at Beck. At the same rigor, the expectation for proficiency is the same. All of those pieces are the same. So on the December 8th day, what we had teachers do is they got in their grade level teams and then they looked at those essential standards. There's 8 to 10 per grade level. And then they agreed upon what are the 3 to 5 learning targets for each of those standards that we're going to chunk out and make sure that we're teaching. That was the first thing they were to accomplish. And then the next piece was, now that we know what the learning targets are, let's all agree on what proficient means. So for example, in ELA, proficient always means that you can do whatever the standard is with grade level text. So we want to make sure that everybody's using third grade text for third grade standards. The other thing around proficiency is just determining, does everybody agree on what the rigor of proficiency means? So I'll show you a first grade example here in a minute, but a lot of great conversation around all of us agreeing that when you're proficient on a standard, again, no matter what building you are, that's the bar, that's the level for what proficient means. And then the last thing is, once they developed those pieces, is coming to some agreement around kind of a district year at a glance. So as we're planning out the standards and when we're going to teach them, can we all agree that in the first quarter, these are the standards and these are the targets that we're going to teach? That then allows us to create a much more aligned assessment to see where kids are on those standards. So, yeah.
What do you do when there isn't an agreement?
Well, that happens, and that's good. Honestly, the discussion around that's really 90% of what this day does. It really helps bring clarity. So I'll show you in a second some of the learning targets that people brought, where there were some vastly different interpretations of the same standards. So this gets consensus. If there's an impasse and teachers really can't agree on something, then we had the leaders of those groups take notes on that, send that back to me and Mindy. We're going to review the work that they did, and then we're going to go back and talk to those teams and really kind of do another level of, all right, let's talk about this standard. We couldn't come to agreement. Let's see if we can get back in there and figure it out. So, so then that last piece is developing that year at a glance. So, we keep likening that to a kind of a roadmap, or this concept of, if everyone is starting with these standards and these chunks, learning targets for the 9 weeks, everybody needs to get to the same place by the end of the 9 weeks. How we all get there may be very different. We may have kids that have gaps and need some of those prerequisite skills taught to them before we can get to that. So you've got that 9 weeks to do it. We always use the analogy of a road trip. If we all decide tonight that we're going to leave and we all need to be in Los Angeles in 2 weeks, we may all get there different routes, different times. I may need to stop. You may need a cup of coffee. Your car may break down, all of these things, but we all need to get there by that same time. So that's kind of what this district year at a glance helps us make that map to say, here are the standards we're teaching. Here's where we need to be by the end of the 9 weeks. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. And this is one of the things that we shared out with them from some of the why. We always want to make sure that we're reinforcing why we're doing this work, but it's that common understanding of what it means to be good at something or proficient, having common understanding about the forms of evidence, what a student has to do. For example, if I say if the standard says I can identify a letter, does it mean I can say it? Does it mean I can write it? Does it mean that if you say it, I know what that letter sound is, or vice versa? So having that common understanding about what it means and what the evidence is, and then what the progression is. So those are kind of the three things that we hit on in those pieces. So here's some examples. So the first one was the definition on the skills necessary to teach a standard to proficiency. So this is an example of a first grade document that we used. And so this is the standard here at the top. Use letter sound knowledge to identify all these different phonetic concepts. And so these are the learning targets, kind of the chunks that they agreed that they were going to pull out and teach separately and then assess before moving on to the next one. Below that, you can see, and I kind of put names, all the different ways that buildings had kind of interpreted that standard and broken it down into learning targets. Some were as simple as just a different word used. Some were things that were maybe in addition to the standard. Some were things that maybe got left out. So they had this document in front of them and used everybody's input and voice from all the different buildings to then agree on what these learning targets are for this standard. So now they know, and when they went back, and you'll see, I'll show you an example of a map, they took those targets and said, okay, in the first 9 weeks for this standard, we need to teach those first 3 targets. So by the end of the first 9 weeks, kids need to know how to use consonant sounds, use short vowel sounds, use consonant blends in decoding. So that's kind of how that worked. And then the second thing that they did is once that they agreed upon those targets, then it was coming to agreement on what it means to be proficient. So this is an example of retell main idea and key details of the text. This is a nonfiction standard for first grade. So their agreement on what proficient means is that as a second grade, or as a first grader, I can use first grade text, and to be proficient, I can do these 3 things. I can retell key details in my grade level text. I can retell the main idea in a grade level informational text. And I can retell orally or in writing or drawing in details of the main idea in a grade level text. So now everyone agrees that for a kid to be proficient in this standard, a student to be proficient, they need to be able to do all 3 of these things. So that creates some uniformity of what the rigor is across every building now for a kid to be proficient. So they did one of these for every standard and every grade level. And then the last thing, this is an example of first grade. This is then kind of what their roadmap ended up being. So they took their standards and then they broke them out with their learning targets of what they were teaching. So in the first quarter, all first grade teachers agreed that for ELA, we're going to teach these standards and these are the targets. So now that allows us to take those district benchmark assessments that we've been doing and tailor them to be very specific to cover what was being taught in that quarter. So that will really make a better assessment for our ELA, so it really aligns and we can really then see if kids aren't performing and walk that back to say, okay, what chunks did they not get? What targets did they not hit? What pieces do they still need more intervention? And then at the end of that, the next steps for teams is they're going to take that district year to glance back and then start looking at their own proficiency maps. So this is really where we talk about the art and science of teaching, but this is really where teachers get to put their own art on the teaching. So you're going to go back with your team. If I'm a teacher, I'm going to go back with my team. We're going to sit down and say, okay, these are the standards we need to cover. How are we going to do that? What is our teaching going to look like? What are our unit plans going to look like? What are our daily lesson plans going to look like? That's when they're going to have the ability to make that their own. They're also going to be able to say, hey, we know, looking at the data we had before, that we had a lot of kids coming in that didn't get some prerequisite skills that they need. So we may need to spend a few more days hitting some of those gaps before we can move on. So that allows them to really tailor the teaching and the learning to the students they have in front of them. And then the last thing is that Mindy and I will now start working with some grade level teams. We're going to have one representative from every building for every grade level to start getting input on what those benchmark assessments will look like and what they think, the length of them, the number of questions, the passages, the types of questions we're going to use. We're going to pull those teams together so they can start having input into what those benchmark assessments every quarter will look like. And then on our March e-learning day, the goal is to have those teams that are working on the assessments share out kind of where they're at with the rest of the teachers in that grade level so they can get some input. And if there's anything we need to go back and tweak, or they have more ideas they want to put into that, we'll still have time in March to make sure we have those assessments ready to go for August when school starts. And then it'll also give teachers a chance to share. So anytime we always get feedback from these days that just the sharing with other people from other buildings is huge. And so this will be a great opportunity for them to be with their other grade level colleagues across the district to say, okay, what are you doing that has really worked for you? Or this is something we're trying. That whole piece is usually very productive and usually one of the pieces that teachers enjoy the most. We're also trying to figure out on that day, and I'll be honest, I don't have the logistics figured out yet, but we'd like to have some time for some vertical collaboration, meaning giving the second grade teachers time to talk to the third grade teachers and the first grade teachers some time to talk to the kindergarten teachers, just to make sure that everything is still lining up for everybody. Any questions? Or turn it over to Claire.
I was just gonna ask the same thing as I do almost everyone. What do you find to be your biggest challenge in terms of maybe accountability? In terms of how do you make sure that they're buying in and are there any consequences if people are like, I think I keep doing my own thing? Does the way that this is modeled keep you from doing that as much because there's more people?
Is it harder to hide? A
Yeah.
little bit, yeah. Yeah, I mean, definitely, because this year we've really been emphasizing that we want to see these products. So just like turning in those learning targets, some buildings had gone a little farther in the work than other buildings had, but we've explained to everyone, like, we're sharing this work with all of us. It's not a gotcha. It's not a trying to shame anyone. We just have to see where everybody's at so we can know where people need help and support and need to grow. And also in that sharing that, we keep saying PLC is learning by doing. We don't expect anyone to have perfection right now. The whole point is that we're continuing to grow and improve, and you can't do that if you don't share what you're doing. So that has been a little bit different for people this year, that we've really been saying we want to see what you're doing. We want to see the products. And so, yeah, but I think all in all, it's been very helpful.
Will there ever be a time down the road that you've seen enough of, what's presented, the best practices, what's had success, what hasn't had success, and you can determine, saying, this is the way that we've seen historically has had the most success with this age group for these standards?
Yeah, and I don't know that it'll ever, we always tell people, like, we'll never actually be completely done, because every year, like with ELA, we're going to get some pieces in place that I keep calling them foundational pieces, that we're now going to be able to attach data to,
Right.
to see those kind of things. So if we're all teaching these standards in this quarter, now we're going to be able to collect some data to see what that really looks like and kind of drill down into, if at Oslo, 6th grade really did a great job on that first assessment, we can walk back and say, okay, show us what those unit plans look like.
Right.
Show us what those lesson plans look like. What did your assessments look like that you got kids to that high level of learning? So we've said, once we get these kind of pillar pieces in place for ELA, we still every year want to have kind of a go back and say, what's it look like? Has the test changed? Has, anything significant changed? Or have we found, like, we chose that standard, but we really think we need to choose a different one, or we need to add another one? But,
Oh yeah, that was
yeah,
kind of my follow-up question. Like the first one, I think there was 8 standards, and they said pick 3 to 5 that I think
yeah,
they need to stress,
yeah,
which basically would leave 3 to 4 that they're not. So they
Yeah.
could be picking the wrong ones, and the data
Right.
would tell us that, and we could go back.
exactly. But now that we're all going to be sharing some of those common pieces, it's going to be a lot easier to walk it back and target
Sure.
what that is.
Well, and to piggyback on that, with the, like, for example, the iLearn exam and was the
Blueprints.
the blueprints.
Uh-huh.
So that way you kind of have a guide for the grade 3 up of what are really kind of the focus area standards, kind of as a starting point.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's what we used when we chose the essential standards. Those were foundational pieces, and looking at that and even using those to walk back to, okay, if this is important in 3rd grade, how do we move up to that K1 too? Because we can't just expect 3rd grade teachers to all of a sudden be able to teach a standard to mastery if they don't have the
Foundational skills.
prerequisites, yeah.
And the DOE provides a document of proficiency levels. So for a particular standard,
Okay.
what is at proficiency, what is approaching, what's below, and what's above. And so when we were having the conversations, when I was in with the fourth grade team, they were having conversations around one of the standards and were thinking, does this represent what it really means to be proficient, or does this? So I steered them towards that proficiency level indicator from the iLearn document so they could see the difference of, like, on the iLearn, this is what they're saying proficiency looks like. So then that helped drive the conversation, and then they revisited the learning target to say maybe the verb in it or some of the wording needs to be changed to better reflect what true proficiency looks like. And so, similar first grade conversation was, does it just mean to identify, or does it mean to recall? That's different skill sets. Can I just point to it and identify it? Or can I draw it up for myself? That's a deeper level of understanding, a greater depth of knowledge. So those are the conversations that are happening in these sessions to help everybody understand what true proficiency looks like and what the level of rigor needs to be for that proficiency.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You have 8 minutes, Brad.
Okay. I will be brief then.
Sorry about that.
So I just want to spend a couple minutes talking about the work of the secondary folks on e-learning day. What we did with middle school teachers and high school teachers. So Rhiannon Harrison and I had a conversation one day, and we talked about do the leaders of the different teams in the content areas really know where they are in the development of all of their courses based on the plans that we set forth. So we put together a little mini self-assessment for those leaders to take a look at where they are in their progress. So prior to the December 8th e-learning day, we asked the administrators and the content specialists who were assigned to the specific content areas to work together as a collaborative team to complete that progress check within the curriculum repository to determine where the content area was. Now, the curriculum repository in secondary is really just the holding place of all of the documents. That's where there's a common location for everyone to come and find their materials. So they all go in there together. So here is an example of that really quick little check that we asked the leaders to do. And so it was really just on the 3-point rubric score here. And at the bottom, the component still needs to be developed. These were the components that we identified. I think I shared these with you earlier in the school year, the essential standards, the scope and sequences, the course overviews, their assessments, the unit plans, and then intervention and enrichment work. So what we did is we asked them to indicate how far they've done on any or all of those. So first of all, does it still need to be developed because they haven't reached it yet? Is it started but still needs to be refined? Or to the best of their knowledge, do they think they have it completed and they are ready to upload it, or they have uploaded it into the repository? Now, it's very interesting that those who marked this top level where they believe that they have completed the work and it's now in the repository, Rhiannon and I are in January going to start meeting with the content specialists individually, and we're going to pull out those documents and we are going to walk through them together through the documents to do a kind of a quality control check on them to see, does this really meet the rigorous expectations that we set forth when we started this work? So we think it's going to be a very productive collaborative meeting that we're going to have with them, and that we can really get to the heart of the curriculum that we really want to go with the different content areas. So after they did their check, and they came up with their findings. That then determined what their plan was going to be for e-learning day. And of course, here they are all again. Do all the courses have their essential standards selected? Well, that's a yes and a no. In some content areas, they pretty much have every course. But in some courses where you have 20, 25 different courses, it's going to take a while to get to all of the courses because of the sheer number of courses that a handful of teachers have to get to. The scope and sequence, this is the document where the teachers are identifying during which quarters in the school year the standards are going to be addressed and or mastered. And then after that, they create a course overview, which is basically a description of the course to start with, and then it identifies the units of learning, and within those units then, the targets and the skills that students need to know and or be able to do are clearly identified there. And that is, of course, drawn right out of the standards themselves. From there, they're able to create their common formative assessments, which come out of their common summative assessment, where they can actually determine how well students did on mastering those standards. After that, they are able to create their units of study, and that's where the guaranteed and viable curriculum is being carried out, unit by unit. And then they also will eventually, and not very many are to this point yet, even though we know that middle school English is very close to moving to steps 7 and 8, which are creating interventions for those students who need additional support and providing extensions in step number 8 there for those who have already mastered the standards and they could benefit from any of those extensions. So a question that has come up when it comes to this collaborative type of work is, why do we engage in this type of work anyway? Why don't we just let teachers do their thing? Leave them alone and let them do their thing. Well, that's a fair question to ask. But if we really look at best practice in education today, we can see that the reason we do that is for this little line there in the bold print that says collective teacher efficacy, which really means it is a staff's or it is the teacher's belief that through their collective action, working together, they can positively influence students, including those students who are disengaged or even disadvantaged. There's a lot of research that supports that right now. So what does that research suggest? It suggests that collective teacher efficacy is ranked as the #1 factor influencing student achievement. Teachers believe that by working together, they can help students achieve is the #1 factor that influences that student achievement. So the question was asked earlier about these teachers working together. This is the end result of them working together and battling through all of those arguments they have about what ought to be selected, because they will come to the best solution. Collective teacher efficacy, look at this, what the research is telling us. More than 3 times as powerful and predictive of student achievement as a student's socioeconomic status. And it has more than double the effect of prior achievement. So in this work, teachers are gaining confidence in each other, in their peers, in their ability to impact student learning when they have a deep understanding of each educational practice. So when we ask that question, why do we engage in this type of collaborative work? This is the reason why. The research has been very clear to us in the last several years that this is the very best approach that we can take. So when we talk about that work, the process of this collective work, it's not more work. Instead, it is the work. And we look forward to our continued work with our building leaders with our building teachers and all of the supports that come around so we can continue this work together.
So obviously, this is indicating that there is a perception that this is more work, right?
There's sometimes that perception. And the reason, one of the main reasons is because it's hard. It's easy for you to sit down and say, this is what I'm gonna do, but it's hard when you sit down with 3 or 4 or 5, or how many of you have in the elementary grade level on those e-learning days? 20, 30
Right.
teachers together to agree upon. So yes, it feels like more work because it is deeper work, I guess is a better way to put it.
And maybe if there was more accountability for those who wanted the more sovereign approach, maybe they'd be more accepting
More
of
accepting.
this, that, you want to do it your way, but if you fail, there's accountability that goes along with it.
Yes, we've tried that,
Okay.
actually, yes.
So is this similar, I remember this, like when my kids were at West Side.
Mhm.
And they were making sure that every subject matter was tied together and those teams worked together back then on some of this. Was that some of the preliminary work that was starting to see how?
That was an early start of collaboration, yes, it was. And that was, a lot of that was cross-curricular
Yes.
in those days.
Kind of like block groups.
Interdisciplinary.
They're
They
putting
were
other
in block
blocks.
groups.
They had their block groups.
Exactly.
Yeah, it
Exactly.
seemed to be effective because things
That's right.
kept getting reinforced.
Exactly.
No matter if you were in math class,
That's right.
it was super interesting to me.
It's, that's a move towards breaking down all of those silos by subject area and seeing that, in the real world, everything
Yeah,
fits together, so, yeah.
it's cool that it's kind of like coming along and saying, hey, that worked. And, so let's see how we can make that best practices out of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Back in the dark ages, when I was in middle school, that was when they first started the concept of, what they called it back then was group work.
Yeah.
And I do remember, I was in a middle school with self-contained classrooms, and I remember one of my teachers decided to put us in groups. So we sat in groups, but everything we did was exactly the way we did it before. The only problem was there were a lot of behavior problems because when you put 4 or 6 kids in a circle facing each other, and then the teacher's up front lecturing, guess what's going on? Not very much, but that was the first early step. But as the research has been collected and practices have been tried, we really know now what works. So really, to me, this is a really exciting time to be in education. I mean, there's a lot of things going on, but this is a really exciting thing because we know what it takes to help students achieve and to learn. And if we put those best practices in place, we can see those results.
And do you mind holding your question to the next part so we don't go over for the board meeting?
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's fun to see you excited about it.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break before starting the board meeting. If everybody could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Every student is known by name, challenged and supported by highly effective staff, and in partnership with the community will graduate career, college, and life ready.
Thank you, Kelly. Welcome to tonight's board meeting. You guys will have opportunity to speak at the end of the meeting if you fill out the form in the back of this form doors filling out. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. After each agenda item, I'll give the audience an opportunity for questions and comments. So up first, we will have Derek Stranford for our moment of pride.
Good evening. My name is Derek Stanford, and I'm a senior at Elkhart High School Human Services School of Study. I'm a member of the Superintendent Student Advisory Council, the treasurer for the senior class student government, a member of the chamber choir and the music department, and a member of the National Honor Society. NHS is a student-led service organization with just over 70 seniors who meet to provide opportunities and events for students within the school district. Each year, the NHS plans a project to provide fun experiences for students and families, while also using that activity as the main fundraiser for the group. This year, we will have a winter carnival. This event will be held at the Elkhart Freshman Division in February and is mostly geared toward families with elementary-age children. This is an event for the whole family, and at this event, there will be games, food, and more. Our goal is to bring in at least 200 patrons to brighten the lives of Elkhart families by having fun, as well as raising funds to continue to provide a service-based project for Elkhart families in the coming years. The Winter Carnival will incorporate small businesses from Elkhart via the silent auction. Because this event is sponsored by a student-led organization, the event is also student-led. Seniors from the Elkhart High School Charter of NHS have formed committees to successfully work as a team to accomplish this project, while learning valuable life skills such as communication, effective planning, creating a timeline for a shared goal, money management through ticket sales, as well as multitasking, because many of the students in NHS are also very involved in other clubs and organizations, both within and outside the school district. This event will utilize several parts of the campus, including the gym and the concession stand, where we will have lots of great food. I encourage you all to spread the word about the Elkhart Community Schools Winter Carnival, sponsored by NHS this coming February. Some other exciting information about our school is the upcoming production from our theater department. This spring, Elkhart High School will proudly bring Mean Girls the Musical to the stage. This is quite an opportunity because we're one of the very first schools in the country to be given the opportunity to put on this production. In fact, several students from the theater department were able to have a video call with Tina Fey, one of the key people involved with the stage production, as well as an actress in the 2004 film. Finally, the Elkhart High School Music Department is looking forward to several performances this month to celebrate the holiday season and showcase the talent in our school. Tomorrow and Thursday, the piano students will perform their capstone in the Little Theater at 6 p.m. Also going on Thursday will be the Freshman Instrumental Concert at the Elkhart Freshman Division at 7 p.m. This coming Monday, the 19th, will be the Winter Concert in the auditorium at this campus at 7:30. Finally, the Elkhart High School Choirs will perform tonight at 7:30, which is where I am headed directly after this presentation. Finally, I thank you for your continued concern and support for the well-being of Elkhart High School, as well as Elkhart Community Schools as a whole. I wish you a happy holiday season, and I thank you for the opportunity to inform you of some positive opportunities going on in the home of the Lions. Thank you.
Great job. What are your plans when you graduate?
Well, for now, I'm working part-time at a grocery store, and I will be working full-time after high school while attending IU South Bend Honors College, studying accounting.
Oh, congratulations. Good for you. Have a good time tonight.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
It is February.
All right. Thank you.
Next up, we have the consent items.
No, EES presenting. There's a second item.
Oh, Okay, sorry. Sorry, Charmaine.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Elkhart Education Foundation is very pleased to present a gold apple to the first responders who saved our beloved Elkhart Community Schools member, Tony England. In regards to the apple that will be placed on the celebration tree, it reads, "In honor of the brave first responders who saved our dear friend, Tony England." And I would like to have Tony come up and say a few words, as well as the first responder who is here, Brendan.
So this is the first time I've met Brendan, and I gotta tell you, I didn't know how it's gonna feel. I've met Jacob, one of the other two gentlemen, and I just found out a whole bunch of information I didn't know. There was a third person. I left work that day after talking with Maggie and Denise, and that's the last memory I have for about 3 weeks. And so to hear that Brendan saw my ID, called to find out how I was doing, and it turns out is really good friends with Natalie Bickle, and have known each other for a very long time. It is a very small world. So I do want to say, you know, when you say to somebody who, you know, saves your life, it's pretty ironic. I'm not a big hugger. And the first thing I did was hug Brendan. If you want me to hug you again in front of people, considering there were other, you know, we were connected before in some ways I'll never remember. So I am so honored that they're honoring you tonight, and EEF does a lot of good work for us, and I'm glad they can identify the folks that really did some amazing work. And just as a reminder, this was at the height of COVID. So for 3 people to get out of a car, break out a window, and start doing CPR on somebody they didn't know, you know, I saw a couple of you at the hospital. It wasn't pretty, and it had not been for them, the doctors were very clear I would not have made it. So I would love to introduce you to Brendan and Brendan's wife, Nicole.
Honored to be here. Thank you guys very much for this. You know, we were lucky enough to be there at the right time for Tony and have the skills necessary to do what needed to be done accordingly. And you know, just happy to be there. And I hope that, you know, if anybody else finds themselves in those situations, or I'm there, that somebody will stop and, you know, provide assistance to me as necessary. You know, I retired from the Army in March, so at the time I was still on active duty, and just happened to be there, and it worked out well. And I'm glad I have this connection to Elkhart schools. And I gotta be honest, I never expected to see Tony up and walking around. You know, we told him today that his foot was 4 on the accelerator, and he was going into a pole even when he wasn't there. But we were there with him and had a nice long one-way conversation, let him know that, that we were going to make sure he was taken care of. I'm very glad to see him here today, and it's delightful to be able to see his daughters and know that we had a positive impact on them. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
And for those who don't know, the celebration tree is right out here, and that's where the golden apple will be placed. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll have the consent items. Is there a motion to?
Move to approve.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Okay, we just have one. We have one. It's from RC Industries, and it's donating 4,000 pounds of aluminum and industrial pallet jack with an estimated value of $11,800, and that's being donated to our welding classes at the Career Center. So thank you to RC Industries.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion?
Yeah, I have one comment, and this kind of goes towards Maggie here a little bit. I noticed that a couple of the employment recommendations right there, people were coming from Tumax and also Lippert. And it's good to see that, we're getting, more people in, because I haven't seen anybody from the RV industry for quite a long time. And it might be an indicator that they're coming because of the slowdown in the RV industry and stuff like that. We need, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Anybody that, in the RV industry and stuff like that during the slowdown period, especially the holidays and stuff like that, that's a tough time. And I wish them well with their employment here at the school corporation. Thanks.
Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We'll finish up the instructional report.
Well, we covered some other items from the instructional report in the work session in the interest of time. We did want to cover the Graduates Preparing to Succeed dashboard in the public meeting so that people would see this and have an understanding as to what happened. So in the past year and a half, the Indiana Department of Education has moved to a new way for school districts and individual schools to be assessed by their communities and for their performance indicators to be reported to the state. This replaces the A to F system that had been in place for federal accountability and state accountability for years prior to this. And so when you go to the Graduates Prepared to Succeed or GPS dashboard site, just today, they have made this site live. And I don't know why this link is kind of hidden and small on the website for the rollout of this, but that's where it is. So when you go to this dashboard, what the IDOE is trying to do with this dashboard is to sort of create a story. And basically through these first pages, what you will see is that the goal has been to look at defining Indiana graduates and what's happening in terms of their entire K through 12 experience, pre-K through 12 experience, and then what that means for workforce readiness. So the state has looked at these 5 indicators. So academic mastery, career and post-secondary readiness, communication and collaboration, students' development of work ethic, and civil, financial, and digital literacy. So early on, the IDOE, with the State Board of Ed's blessing, identified these 5 areas as the areas that they would want to have reflected on this dashboard. And so what they're wanting to look at is how this breaks down and how every grade level builds upon the other. And so they look at it in these bands. So pre-K to grade 2, so what's happening in readiness for early learning and early literacy. What are we doing with an emphasis on reading and STEM in grades 3 through 8? Providing transitions for students and getting them ready for high school, and then being on track to graduation and the path beyond. So those are the 4 main chunks that they're looking at in terms of what they are. So in pre-K through grade 2, where do we start? And I'm not going to go through every one of these, but generally what they do for each of those 4 chunks is kind of talk about what's important in that area. So in pre-K through 2, how are we expanding quality, affordable, and accessible learning opportunities? Then what's the data tell us? So for each of those 4 areas, they'll have a data chunk that kind of talks about something as to why that area is important. And then it goes on to the next building block. So I'm going to skip the overview so that we can go right to the dashboard. And on the dashboard, there again is this general snapshot of where Indiana is right now. So where are we in terms of 3rd grade literacy? Basically 20% of 3rd graders are not proficient in key literacy skills. In terms of college and career credentials, where are we? In terms of employment enrollment, what happens if you take education beyond high school? What is completion of graduation of the state graduation rate? What is our 6th grade math proficiency? And then where are we going? So what kind of goals has the state set in terms of those same indicators? And then you have the ability that when you click on this is to search for your individual school or school district. So if we click in here and go to Elkhart, then you will see the dashboard for this. So again, you see the 4 headers across those areas. So right now, when we're looking at pre-K and grade 2, those indicators are coming soon. So within the county of Elkhart County, we have a tool from Horizon Education Alliance that we've been using for kindergarten readiness. The state has yet to determine what this measure is going to look like and how that's going to be happening, and also what's happening in early reading skills from pre-K through grade 2. What's going to be the measure of that? Then in grades 3 through 8, we're looking at 3rd grade literacy and 6th grade math growth. In grades 9 through 12, the indicators that they've put in place right now are graduation completion and college and career credentials, and then looking at employment and enrollment beyond that. Board members, for your benefit, in front of you with your packet of information, I have given you sort of a descriptor and an overview of what the state has been saying are going to be the indicators for elementary grades and high school grades and what they're looking for. And then the page that's vertical, the portrait page, is a deeper explanation of each of these measures and where they've come from and what happened. So, for example, the 3rd grade literacy and the 6th grade math growth, those come from iLearn scores reported through the iLearn. The graduation pathways completion, you'll see the description there is that when we determine our graduates and our local list of graduates that we submit by October, that list of graduates, then we designate what type of diploma they're receiving. We designate how they've completed the 3 buckets towards graduation, so that graduation pathway completion is there. College and career credentials, every spring we do a report where we submit every course and students who have earned dual credit. Our CTE report indicates students who've received credentials. So all of that reporting is coalesced into this indicator here. And then some of these employment and enrollment indicators are things that come from the Commission on Higher Education and a state database where they're looking at median income earning for students who graduate and what happens. So there's sort of that benchmark dashboard up here at the top. And then as you go down underneath it, you see in more detail these other indicators. So the grades 3 through 8, when you look at the elementary targets that I've given you there and the indicators, right now they have fleshed out these. And so when we look at our 3rd grade literacy, again, you get a track record of data over the last few years and what's been happening, a breakdown by demographic groups, and get that disaggregated out a little bit. Same thing with 6th grade math. Then they're also looking at students who are taking advanced coursework prior to the 9th grade, so they're getting high school credit while they're in 8th grade or potentially even 7th grade. And then 21st Century Scholars enrollment, the number of students who we have enrolled in that program, and those kind of things. So these are all the indicators that are there and providing those last few years of data in those snapshots with where we are currently, where the state is, and what the state's general trend movement has been and what our movement has been. So those all give us those indicators in the large picture of where we are as a district. And then you can also go up and you can also search by an individual school and look at that as well. When you look across the information here at the top, this free and reduced lunch rate and this student count are from last October. They have not updated it with where we are with this year. On October 1, there is a count that is taken called the pupil enrollment count, where it looks at every student who's in our building, not the ADM count that funds us, but students who might be in our building. That's where that number comes from. So when you see this number, it will reflect that pupil enrollment count, which tends to be higher than our ADM count. And then this free reduced lunch percentage is from last fall, when it was lower because many families we were receiving free lunch and not many families had followed through with doing the full application. This percentage is higher this year that you'll see as well. So what they intend to do with this is that there will be future iterations of this. So they'll roll this out, then they'll provide a revised version kind of in a sandbox or behind the scenes, provide us an opportunity to look at it, provide feedback. Then once it's ready for prime time, they'll roll out that next iteration. So this will be something that you'll see various versions of it rolling out over time, making tweaks. When this was first rolled out, there were it was embargoed or hidden from the public. We had the opportunity to look at it. We were spot checking our data and content with what was in here. there was a form where we had the ability to make suggestions and provide feedback, and lots of people across the state did, and so that's where it's landed as it is right now. So again, the encouragement would be for people to go to indianagps.doe.in.gov and be able to see this, or if you would just Google Indiana graduates prepared to succeed, then it would take you to the link to be able to go in and look at this and see the data. But this, again, was just released to the public this morning, and I wanted to make sure that you as board members understood what data was feeding into it, and then we did an explanation to the public. Any questions?
Yeah, I got it. So the goals that they have here, how did they develop the goals? Are the goals subject to change? Because, I mean, you look at the college and career credentials, you know, we are doing great compared to the state. We're 3 times what the state is. But 60% in 7 years?
Yeah, that was one of the most aggressive things that has been discussed. So in some meetings that I was in with an advisory council with Dr. Jenner and some conversations I had with Jason Callahan, this was an evolving thing, and actually they set it slightly lower than a number they had originally been talking about. But the goal being is that to meet the workforce needs of Indiana and to encourage more people to be going into post-secondary, going to college. This captures both of those. So the goal is that they want to have more people. So again, if I back up and talk about one of the indicators here, for example, is the 21st Century Scholars enrollment. So the governor's workforce cabinet is suggesting that there be a system by which students are automatically enrolled in 21st Century Scholar. So if that happens and some other things happen, and perhaps there's more CTE funding, or perhaps there's funding for meeting higher targets in dual credit, that the state's talking about how could they incentivize to get more students into either the college path or getting credentials through a CTE pathway. So that's where they've set that, and we all agree, Brandon and I have had conversations about this, that is a very, very aggressive goal to have as a state, but it's where they've set it in order to try to meet the needs of our workforce.
So that'd be great if we hit it, but I mean, that one is, you look at the other goals and they seem realistic, but that one just, I mean, that is big. I mean, you're talking a 1,200% improvement statewide.
Yeah.
But is that 60%, do you think that's realistic for Elkhart County? I mean, we're super heavy duty manufacturing.
Well, but it includes credentials, so it would be welding credentials, it would be any post-secondary credential or workforce. Certificate in logistics, I mean, anything. So where you're getting anything beyond just a basic high school diploma would count in that statistic.
Okay, and then the bottom one right here, student attendance, right there. Guys, what's going on there?
Well, this is COVID and post-COVID, and this is, I mean, you see the statewide has taken a dip as well. So those are things that we're all rebounding from. And as you look at our statistics, I mean, again, these are rebounding some. It's our white students that we would have to pay more attention to in terms of attendance.
So is this last year's data?
Yes.
So.
Yeah, so this would have been the data that would have been reported in the AT report that's collected in June of 22.
Okay.
Not that it's easy to do, but it seems to me like getting students back into class is going to push all those other numbers, right to the max. But if they're not showing up, that's a problem.
Any other questions?
Is there any questions or comments from the audience? Okay.
Oh, I guess I should stay here because the next item is the feasibility study. So we have discussed the importance of that demographic and feasibility study and how we would want to make that a standing item on the agenda. So for the members of the public, in earnest, we have begun the work on that demographic and feasibility study. So over the summer, we had representatives from SiteLogic come into our buildings and begin the process of looking at our facilities. School IQ is the arm that's helping us with the feasibility study. And on December 1st, we had a meeting of our key committee. So this is a cross-section of parents, community members, business folks, civic leaders, members of the school community who all came together and met in this room. About 40 members, a little over 40 members invited, close to 30 were able to attend that evening. And the consultants from SiteLogic and School IQ met with that group and explained the overall process. The process that we're looking at is that they would begin by getting a sense of the perceptions of our community. And so in media outlets, social media, we have done a push to be able to have people complete surveys. So if folks would go to our Elkhart K12in.us website, one of the first things that pops up is that blue link for the surveys. And if you click on the link for the surveys, it takes you to a list of surveys related to topics and themes that the district is interested in getting public perception on. And so these themes were all things that were identified and approved by the board as some things that they would like to know more information from the community about. So anyone within the community, students, parents, community members, are welcome to come in and click on any of these links. And when you click on it, it takes you to a Survey Monkey where you identify kind of what your affiliation is. And then there's a series of statements where you strongly agree to strongly disagree, 6 different answers there to choose from. Takes just a few minutes, and they're anywhere from 12 to 15 statements, maybe a couple more on some of the surveys, but generally 12 to 15 that you would answer, and each one takes just a few minutes to complete. So we're encouraging members of the public to come in and complete any of these that they're interested in, as many of them, all of them would be welcome. But if there's a particular topic that you're interested in, we're asking community members to come in and do this. We are reminding people within the school community to do this every few days so that we do that. There are a couple of surveys related to language arts and math and curriculum that are specific to the school community and internal. And they've all been linked to the ability to complete these as well. And then Brenda and the team are working on continuing to push those out in various ways. They've also been pushing them and the announcements out through Seesaw, through Canvas, and working on with the tech team on getting a link on iPads and things as well.
Can we have all the schools put a link on their Facebook pages, push it that way? Can we do an all call? Can we find out if schools that have PTA Facebook pages, if they can get the link out, and just encourage people, regardless if you have kids in the district or not, it's not just people in the district. As I've shared it out too, there are also people who live in our district that choose not to send their kids to our district. We need them to be filling it out too. So, there's a lot of different categories of surveys with information that we need to get. So the more we can get people sharing and with their friend networks, the better information that we'll get.
And is there a plan for people who may not have technology? Or don't know how to use a computer, like maybe an elderly person or somebody that doesn't have a computer at home?
I know that had been discussed with Dell and the team, so I'll
The
check.
communication folders that all the schools have. For example, some schools have red folders, they could be paper flyers that go out that explain exactly what this is.
And I know there are flyers going out that way as well. Yep.
That's important. And then you said something about looking at the curriculum that we're looking at, the elementary curriculum. So that's only for staff, parents.
It's particularly questions about the implementation and things more for instructional staff.
Okay.
So it's geared just for the way instruction,
Right.
essential standards, kind of
Okay.
questions about the processes that we talked about earlier.
When you narrow it down to the few that you're looking at, do you invite parents the opportunity to look at what we're looking at placing in the schools?
Oh, we always do. Yeah, with our curriculum adoption, those resources are placed on display and people can come in and see
Okay.
them and provide feedback on them. Yep. I will follow up with Brenda regarding kind of the plan for what's happening
Yeah, I
there.
think
So,
the more we can get it pushed out
Yep.
and people to share with their friend networks and get it out will be helpful for us as a school system going forward.
Are people able to, encourage to like repost or put that on social media? Like if I wanted to put it on my
Yeah.
Facebook page for people to fill out. Is that being encouraged too for people to share the links that way?
I'll check with how she's doing that, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's an option, yeah.
I mean, what I did is I just shared on my page, I just shared the post that the Elkhart School System made and just put a note, see the link in the post below, and shared it to that and some other pages I'm part of.
What was the deadline for the survey?
The 22nd, 23rd, yeah, 23rd on that Friday.
How long have we had to do the survey?
It rolled out last Thursday.
Oh, not to be frustrating, but like, I feel like if we had a roll out, shouldn't we have like thought of every avenue of communication?
Many of these things I know Brenda's thinking about or has done or will be, I mean, I just need to follow up as to
Right.
what's
Well,
happened.
what I'm saying is like, we knew the feasibility study was here. We knew that we were going to be rolling this out. So like, this is like another one of those catch-22s that as soon as that date hit, like all of these practices should have been in place. So that way we weren't getting into.
Well, she did share it on all social media, it went on our website, she did a press release, and it was in the papers, and I mean, it's been out there.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and an email went out, I do know an email went out to all families about it, so.
Did you do it, Jess?
Is there any other discussion? From us, then you can come. Any other discussion from the board? Okay, now, any questions or comments from the audience? If you can please come up to the microphone.
Okay. So as a parent coalition, we're curious about the feasibility committee. And we were wondering what that looks like as far as equity. So I know that it was a big deal when this committee was selected that there would be equity. And so we're wanting to know what the demographic makeup of this committee looks like right now.
So the goal for the committee was to mirror the demographic in our district. So we worked really hard to make sure it was a balance of male, female, that we had a good representation from African Americans, Hispanics, some of the other, we have a few Asian, obviously Caucasian, and we have people from different areas of the school, like different departments. We have community leaders, we have people from agriculture background, business leaders, parents, grandparents. So there is a wide variety of different perspectives, backgrounds on the committee. And I feel like the first meeting went very well. There was a broad perspective of broad perspectives that I think balanced out the conversation. So I think we have a good key committee, and I really feel confident that they can bring the board several good options that we will be able to narrow down the best option for the Elkhart community.
One thing that's big for us is equity, like even with our parent coalition, that's something we're working, striving towards. And I actually went to the public forum where SiteLogic, School IQ spoke to the public. And they indicated that Elkhart schools are 62% Black, Latino, or other, and that the committee must be 50-50. Must be, no questions. So my question is it 50% Caucasian and 50% other? Is there true equity on this committee?
I can't say that the percentages is 50-50. It was recommended. I'm not sure if that's the way it was stated, but I believe we have a good variety of backgrounds, ethnicities that will give us a very good option.
Well, the options may be there. When I went to that meeting, he point blank told the public that if it's not 50-50, it won't work. Those were his exact words. I wrote it down. And so my question is,
I think it's like What we're asking everybody to do is trust the process. You guys asked for us to get the community involved in major decisions. That's what we did. We chose SiteLogic because of their high engagement with the community. So what we're asking is that you trust the process. Everything won't come down to every single percentage or detail, but we do have a wide variety of backgrounds, ethnicities, different perspectives from the community. So I would just say trust the process and give us a chance to go through the process before
But that's
it's
very
encouraged
concerning.
that it's not going to work.
Right, no, that's not necessarily it. I'm saying sitting before the coordinator who is coordinating this entire committee, he point blank said, if this is not 50-50 equity, it will not work. Those are his words. So this is somebody who has experience in this, he's done this, and so if you can't say there's 50-50 equity, while there may be representation of different backgrounds and different cultures, if it's not equitable, then
So
from the jump.
50-50
Yeah,
doesn't
like-
mean equitable. It
No.
just means it's not 50-50. So equitable can mean lots of different things. But what I want to encourage you to do is, again, trust the process. This is only the first meeting. We haven't shared any reporting, anything else, but this is the initial. So what I'm asking you to do is just trust the process. Give us a chance to go through it before you say it's not going to work.
Well, I mean, the concerning part is if we go through it and we don't have that level of equity from the jump, like how much, I've heard numbers thrown out, like this is costing ECS like $98,000 or something, like was a number thrown out. If we don't have the equity from the jump and we're trusting the process, why would we do that when the man that presented this to our community point blank said, if there is a 50-50 diversity, he said specifically.
What is 50-50,
white.
what is 50-50 diversity?
He said 50% white and 50% other, that this committee must be that makeup or it will not be equitable and it will not work. Those were his exact words, and I have it recorded if you'd like it, but this is the man that is running the committee, so.
23 of the 43 are minority. But also what I would encourage you to do, they will be here presenting on what date in January, Mr.
We don't have a
Thomas?
date specifically.
In
set yet.
January, so whatever concerns or questions or comments you have, you are more than welcome to come back to that meeting and you can ask him directly. So you can get more.
What was the date?
We don't have a date yet, but we will have one for you.
Okay.
So that would mean it's about 55-45 minority versus Caucasian. So do we need to kick off a couple minorities so we have 50-50?
No, people have talked about the committee, and from the representation that was at the first one, there was concern that there wasn't equity. So that's why we wanted the
Oh,
actual.
you mean the one that was,
percentage.
that they
Yeah.
just had, that, but,
What, December 1st, I mean, the December 1st meeting? Is
The
that what you're
only
talking
meeting that
Yeah,
I'm aware of.
but that because.
Well, I mean,
didn't show up.
Yeah, because there was
Right,
30
so that's
attended
why
out
we
of
wanted
40.
to ask, like, what is the true percentage here? Because from
Well,
what we
you
were
want,
told,
you
is
want
that
to run the true percentage,
representation.
not what you saw on December 1st. So
Exactly.
your concern, okay, so your concern was on December 1st.
Is
You
this the
didn't see
representation?
what the equity, yeah.
Exactly.
So you wanted to know what the percentage was, not what you visually saw on December 1st.
Exactly.
Okay, so then that was the percentage which Rocky gave you, yes.
Okay, thank you guys.
You're welcome. Is there any other questions or comments from the audience? All right. The next agenda item, Dr. Tallheimer.
The administration recommends the board approve an exception to facility usage policy 7510 for the family of Garvin Robinson for the use of Northside Gymnasium for a memorial service on December 10th.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any can you guys let me ask for a motion? You are good hold today. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
The next item is not an item for action necessarily, just an administrative regulation. In preparing the organizational chart for the new board members, we realized that the alternative principal for School of Study, or School Without Walls, excuse me, was not underneath the Department of Exceptional Learners, and the Director of English Learner positions had not been added to that chart after the addition of that position earlier this year. So we have updated those and have those on that organizational chart. So that is for your review.
Is there any discussion? Is there any questions or comments from the audience? Okay.
Next item would be that the school district has a non-voting member who is appointed to the Elkhart City Redevelopment Commission. It is time for that appointment for 2023 to be made again, and Doris Ann Nielsen has expressed interest in being reappointed as the school district member to the Redevelopment Commission. So that would need to be approved by the board.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion or questions from the audience? Okay, motion passes. Dr. Shepherd? Oh, sorry. Calm down. Good night.
Who's trying to go fast now? Yeah?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now motion passes. Dr. Shepherd?
I am happy to bring to you another new course offering as one of our pathways in the high school. And this course is Aerospace Engineering. I mean, what an exciting title that is, where students will be exposed to the fundamental knowledge of atmospheric and space flight. This lab-based classroom instruction will provide creative thinking and problem-solving activities that simulate flight and space vehicles in their environments. This is a course that's not offered in very many schools in the state of Indiana, and so we are very happy that it's going to be added to our engineering pathway, and we look forward to it being taught. And right now, Dan Walsh has the credentials, as well as some other teachers, but he's the one who's really interested and excited about it, so we're going to be excited to see this class being launched.
It would be a shame if he listened to one teacher. It would just be a shame with everything that he does in the summer and all the things that he does for our children.
And
It's just his
and
dynamic
his extensive
background. Oh, it would be a
Exactly.
shame. I mean, we have like a golden egg right here in our school, so to not use him would be devastating.
So I have a question, and it goes back to our discussion during the work session on the content leaders and all that stuff. So
Yes.
when we have a new course that comes, and this is a pretty specialized course,
Yes.
so how does that play into the conversation we had earlier with going through and figuring out the proficiencies and the standards and the mapping and all that? How does that work?
That actually is supposed to be part of the process of developing a new course.
Okay.
They come here, they go through that process
And they'll have that all done before
before the class begins.
the class begins in
Yes.
August? Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
In fact, they should have had it all outlined
Before here.
Yes,
Okay.
and that's why it has numerous signatures for approval before it comes to our office.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion from the board? Is there any questions or comments from the audience? Okay, thank you, Dr. Shepherd. Jason?
Good evening. We have 1,938 iPads that have reached the end of their life cycle for our one-to-one program. And the business office seeks board approval to sell back these iPads and purchase with common school fund loans. The revenue received will further the district one-to-one program. And specifically, we'll use the funds from this round to buy charging stations for the classrooms, which is really go ahead.
Move to approve?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Yeah, got a question.
Yeah.
Are those students, do the students able to get movies on iPads?
I mean, they can create movies and they can watch certain movies. They can use YouTube, but it's restricted, so certain videos have to be approved.
And why I asked that question is I had a teacher asked me the other day and they said, you're telling the student to do something and stuff like that, and you come back and apparently she walks around and finds that, they're watching movies that are not part of the curriculum or whatever like that, and there's no way to tighten that up.
Well, we can talk to the principals about restricting YouTube. That's where they would watch most of the videos.
Mm-hmm.
But, there's a lot of good stuff on YouTube too.
Well, yes, I wholeheartely agree with that, but, cracking open a book, also has extraordinary value too.
I would agree.
and trying to use the teacher's time efficiently as well as that of the student, I think we ought to take a look at that.
The iPad is a wonderful device for learning, but it can also be distracting.
Yes.
And disengaging with real people sometimes.
Yeah, the problem of the country.
Is there any other discussion from the board? Any questions or comments from the audience? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. I have two quick things. The first is a resolution to allow transfers. This is something we come with every year at the end of the year. It allows us to use a software program that realigns budget dollars, no expense dollars. So with that, Madam President, I would ask for approval of the resolution for transfer of appropriation.
Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Are there any questions or comments from the audience? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. And my second final thing is the business office is requesting a premium holiday that would occur. This is for insurance, medical, and dental. Insurance premium holiday on the pay of December 23rd.
Merry Christmas.
Is there a motion?
Motion.
Is there any discussion? Any-
Yeah, I have a comment. That's why everybody showed up tonight, was because of the premium holiday, wasn't it? And Mr. Scott's the most popular man in the room.
Is there any,
That's only a fleeting thing.
any questions or comments from the audience? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dora, do we have any forms from the audience? Thank you. Denise?
Denise Red, I'm not the only Denise here.
I think so.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Denise Red. I work for transportation, and I'm also the bus committee president for this year. I'm coming before you today to talk to you about some items as quickly as possible as far as our wages. I was not here for the last meeting. I apologize. However, we did not get a chance to negotiate. We set up 3 meetings and each meeting was canceled. The 4th meeting, Mr. Thorne had an emergency, so our sympathies go out for him for that. However, things still have to go on. We've seen that it was approved for a $1 increase. However, we're looking at some other negotiations that we would like to look at. One of the questions that the board asked, because I did watch the minutes, was what do we need to do to be able to improve the things that are going on at transportation? Okay. I have been driving for 13 years. Prior to that, we know one of the best things that Elkhart had going for them was that the transportation was the best thing going. You were able to come and get insurance at 4.5. It was one of the top paying positions in the, well, around the surrounding areas. Now we are at the lowest. Okay. If you look at the surrounding schools, Penn is starting off at 25. Jimtown is starting out at 29. Concord is at 26. Goshen is somewhere between 25. We are at 21. That will make a big difference on how we get people in. Our insurance and incentives have not been touched in over 23 years. Okay, we have been at $600, and that 20 cents, 30 cents, 50 cents, and 70 cents will go up next year. However, that is something that we also want to look at. One of the other things we would like to look at is we would also like to see an increase in our trip pay. We would also like to see an increase in our bonuses. Different things like that will make a big difference on getting people here at Elkhart Community Schools. We would also like to see a daily bonus. We have did some comparison of other schools and seeing what they have been offering their schools to get people to come in on a daily basis. We are struggling at the transportation department. Myself, I drove 6 routes today. I have been up since 3:30 this morning. I check in at 5. I did not get done until 4:30. I did my own routes, and because we're so short, I had to fill in and do other people's routes as well. I do not get paid for that because they consider that to be downtime. My time is up.
Thank you, Denise.
All right, thank you.
Thanks so much. It's good information.
Carrie?
Hi, my name is Carrie. I reside in Elkhart County, and I'm also part of transportation. I concur with everything she said. Plus, a few years ago, when I first started here and we started implementing the e-learning days into our schedules, those were non-reported work days for us. A couple of years ago, we started reporting for 4 hours, half days. Now, all of a sudden, 24 hours prior to one of our e-learning days, back in November, I believe, they told us 24 hours prior that we had to be there for 8 hours. Most of the time, our meetings were from 8 to noon. Many of us work a second job. I work a second job from 8:30 to 1. My boss expects me to be there those days that I am committed to them, which are Wednesday through Friday between my routes. You guys are expecting me to work 8 hours, my normal route's only 5. That's unfair. We're not guaranteed insurance. We're not guaranteed the same amount of route every year to year. We don't have enough routes for everybody to have summer school. So why would I have to do 8 hours if I don't even do 8 hours on a normal day? Recently, we found out a week prior to our e-learning day we had last week, then they said it was mandatory. So everybody canceled appointments, whatever. 24 hours prior, they tell us, oh, now you can use a benefit day after people have already canceled appointments, changed work schedules, all of this stuff. I feel that it should be optional for those of us without using our benefit days. You know, I mean, I have to secure the second job in the summertime because there's not enough summer school routes for everybody. So I need to make sure that I was hired in as a part-time job, but everybody wants us to use this as our main job. How is it a main job if I don't even qualify for insurance? So I just ask you guys look at that, and hopefully we can make it optional for those of us that are working 2 jobs or have made alternative things, because some of us have kids that are e-learning at home too. Can't leave a first grader at home e-learning by themselves, so we can do 8 hours of meetings.
Thank you.
Dawn?
Good evening. My name is Dawn Winters, and I'm here to represent the paraprofessionals for Elkhart Community Schools. It's my understanding that our proposals were already presented to you last meeting, but I would like to speak on those proposals. So our first one that we had asked for was a $3 raise. With the inflation and the higher living cost, $1.25 is not enough. That's not even going to cover a full tank of gas for us to get to work for that week. With us having no pay for spring break, fall break, Christmas break, we're absolutely not asking for money for those days. We're not working those days, but we need to have more pay to get us through those days that we don't have any pay through the school. Most of us do work 2 jobs, including myself. I work 12 hours today, but I'm here to speak for our parents. And when we come back in January, we don't even get a paycheck until February. So we have to try to save for that, but it's getting so much harder because we don't have enough money with the inflation, and the cost of living has went so high. Also, our next one, we would like to have a retention bonus. Actually, I skipped a page, I'm so sorry. Yeah. Okay, I'm so sorry. We have unpaid days. I feel that we know that we are absolutely our teachers' right hands. We are doing interventions, success, foundations, small reading groups. We absolutely prove our work to enrich, that we enrich our children's lives and education absolutely every day. Next, we would like all paid holidays. For example, we have a day for Thanksgiving, we got an extra day, but that's not paid for us. And this year, we also have an extra day for Christmas, which is not a paid holiday. But we deserve those paid holidays. Next, we would like a retention bonus. The bus drivers get a retention bonus. We have to hustle a job every year to get us through our summers. I believe that there are multiple positions that are opened in Elkhart Community Schools. Many of us have 20 plus years in the school. The school needs to step up and show us that they care about us and that we are an important part of the school system. We are an important part of this village. Next, I'm so sorry. The increment raises. I understand we got a little bit more for increment raises. Also, we, at 20 years, that stops. That needs to not stop. We need a benefit if that's extra days that's included for us, but that shouldn't stop. Yes.
Thank you. Rachel?
Sorry, it's kind of a
It
together deal.
doesn't matter.
I'm Jessie. I am a Elkhart parent. As members of the ECS Parent Coalition for Bully Prevention and Mental Health, we want to take a moment to thank the administrators who participated in our first community culture and climate awareness event. We also want to extend gratitude to Aaron Mishler, Elkhart City Councilman, for moderating the panel discussion. In addition, we want to recognize Doug and Ann from the board and the approximate 70 parents and community members who are in attendance. A special round of applause for Lindsay, who not only helped us lead the charge in getting the event done, but also representing ECS on the panel. As we gear up for our next community event, February 23rd, we are looking to add diversity to our parent team, along with asking for more representation and hands-on deck from ECS administration, the school board, and staff members. When all hands are on deck, more work can be done to support our children and families. Our current goals include more expansive community culture conversation and changes, internal school policy changes, as well as legislation revamping. We know that to do so, we must be strong in numbers and together in our purpose. Additionally, we have compiled a spreadsheet of feedback from the 12-6 forum that we would like to share with you.
Thank you.
Through the feedback we gathered, we thought it was important to note the things that were likes and suggestions of improvement for members in attendance. The open Q&A was a key component in engaging community participation. Audience members would like to see more elected officials present, along with more administration and board member participation. The answers provided by the panel members were helpful and informative. It was also noted that there was not enough response back to the participants from the Q&A, nor enough time. Advertisement was not up to par, and we intend to start marketing for the February 23rd event no later than the first week back from winter break. As Frederick Douglass, an African-American abolitionist educator and writer, expressed, it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. Collectively, we must all be willing to look at the whole child. Only then will we begin to see true progress. Again, we thank you for all who participated in our first Community Culture and Climate Awareness event. We as a parent coalition look forward to working with you all more directly and effectively in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Talon, do you have anything?
Would just like to thank all the teachers and administrators for the work on the e-learning day. Great conversations, and I hope you got a snapshot of what that looked like on that day as we continue to work on refining those pieces to increase our student achievement. And then I also would just like to thank all of the school staff, support staff, everybody who does everything to take care of students and prepare them for their final exams and for the end of the semester, but also the things they do to support students and their families as we head towards into winter and towards the holiday season, and the things that they do to look out for our families. Thank you.
Is there anything from the board?
I just want to say thank you to the bus drivers and the parents for coming here and speaking. It's nerve-wracking and it's a little overwhelming, and you did really well, Dawn. I know you were nervous about it, but also the utmost appreciation to all of you. Our bus drivers are the first and the last people to see our students every single day. Our paraprofessionals are with them. When our teachers are having problems in their classrooms, it's the parents that have to take the kids out, or if the child is frustrated, it's the parents that are walking the hallways. It's the parents that substitute. It's the parents that have to watch the lunchroom. It's our bus drivers that are working in our cafeterias when they get off the route, but sometimes they can't. Of course, I love Kevin, and I love to spend his money, and I'd love to see us being equitable. We talk about equity all the time, but when we're not equitably financially taking care of our staff, I will fully support you any way that I can. And I'm proud to have the leadership that we have in our bus garage. John is a wonderful man, and we have wonderful bus drivers, and we need to be supporting each other and knowing that, you know, we have the right leadership there, and we have the right leadership that watches over all of our parents and our cafeteria staff. So, you know, I pray for you guys all the time, and I hope for you guys all the time, and I will find a way to spend Kevin's money soon.
Yeah, Mayor Robertson thanked Elkhart Community Schools for quickly responding for the use of Northside Gym last Saturday. He was very appreciative. And I'd also like to note the passing of longtime principal Kate Kuhmichael, who was come to Elkhart as a principal at Monger and then later at Pinewood. And her family also had 4 children. 3 went through Central and 1 went through Memorial. And they were very appreciative of the recognition from Elkhart Community Schools that was provided to the family. Thank you.
Is there anything else from the board? Meeting adjourned.